Princess Alexandra Hospital, PA, has missed the deadline to apologize to a family of an 85-year-old man who could have spent his last days at home. Bernard Collins, 85, died sitting up in his bed after a battle with chronic kidney disease in February last year, with daughter Tracy Ezra, from Bishop Stortford, left holding his dead body for 45 minutes before a nurse arrived in the room. Angry at the treatment her father had received, she went to the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, which upheld her grievance. In a report into his death, the Ombudsman found multiple faults with the trust, and ordered for a letter of apology to be written to Mrs. Ezra and explain what steps staff were taking. However, despite being ordered to do this, PA has still not written to Mrs. Ezra and has missed its 2-month deadline to do so. Mrs. Ezra said, "My dad has now passed a year and 4 months ago, and I am still fighting for him. They couldn't even be bothered to write a letter. It is extremely sad, with her experience of the hospital, and their failure to apologize." She says that she will never go to PA, in Harlow, or take any of her relatives there. Bernard died aged at 85 million rupees. Ezra said, "I don't want Harlow to look at my son. I would take anyone to Cambridge, Addenbrooke's hospital, instead. Anyone would understand if they have loved someone and lost them. If someone can die sitting up in bed and leave them like that." While the report into Mr. Collins' death clears the hospital of much of the wrongdoing she accuses, their physician advisor noted a delay in pneumonia treatment kept Mr. Collins from spending the end of his life at home. Tracy, 50, who showed the report to the Observer, said, "I want other families to be aware of the kind of treatment we got. We have been robbed of my dad. East hurts, rural areas still lagging behind towns in internet speed. I am an only child. My dad has been the man who taught me right from wrong and raised me, and this is probably the reason I am doing this, because I couldn't have got more love from my dad." On February 20th last year, Tracy and her mum, Marion, who married Bernard 60 years ago, decided to stay by his bedside overnight. The next day, mum of one, Tracy, and her 80-year-old mum got up to walk out of the ward when Bernard, who had been unresponsive from morphine for days, coughed before passing away. Bernard with his grandson, Jet. Tracy said a nurse tended to Bernard, then turned and said, "I'm so sorry," before leaving the ward. However, Tracy said she and Marion were left alone with Mr. Collins for 45 minutes before another nurse appeared. The Ombudsman's report accepted Bernard should not have been left sitting up for this time, but said the hospital had limited staff. "We just got up to walk, and I think he knew, so he coughed, and that was it," said Tracy. "I held his body like he was asleep. I used to always kiss him. He got colder and colder for 45 minutes before someone came." Bernard in hospital. To make matters event worse for Tracy, just 12 hours before her dad's death she found out her husband, Jack, had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. Bernard was admitted to the hospital on January 26, 2017 and put on an end-of-life care pathway by February 10. On February 13, he was examined for a cough by a junior doctor. His chest was clear. Bishop Stortford could be latest. Hertfordshire town to set up a bid. 2 days later, he needed supplementary oxygen and was given an X-ray. On February 16, a chest exam revealed crackles and wheezing, and a blood test showed type 1 respiratory failure. But it was only on February 17, 4 days after the initial complaint and 2 days after the X-ray, when Bernard's consultant made the diagnosis of pneumonia. He died 4 days later. Bernard's headstone. The report concluded, "From this, overall, our physician advisor said that the standard of documentation and the shortcomings in the clinical assessments is disappointing, and it appears the trust was not as focused on keeping him as well as it could have been." He said it is not possible to say what the full impact of this was. He explained that Mr. Collins was clearly very unwell and regrettably had a limited life expectancy. He said the pneumonia would not have directly related to his kidney disease, but there was a missed opportunity to have treated the pneumonia earlier and therefore for Mr. Collins to have been able to get out of hospital earlier, which meant he may have had the opportunity to spend the end of his life at home, as per his wishes. Tracy also complained a junior doctor at the hospital injected her dad with penicillin despite his allergy to the drug. She told The Observer it was only thanks to her spotting his heart rate double on the monitor that the problem was quickly spotted. Bernard and Marion were married for 60 years. The Ombudsman said this particular complaint had already been dealt with by the trust and appropriate action has been taken to ensure that the same thing cannot happen in future. Tracy paid tribute to her dad, who worked as a butcher in East London all his life and was well loved by his clients and wouldn't hurt a fly. She said, "He loved my son, Jet, 13, and my son loved him. He was like the son he never had, he even called him son. He was a family man and wouldn't hurt anyone." The PA has been approached for comment about their failure to meet the deadline, but has not yet responded.